You bought a printer for 50 bucks at Target. Great deal, right? Then 3 weeks later, you need to replace the ink. And guess what? The replacement cartridges cost $75. More than the entire printer. How does that make any sense? Here's what nobody tells you about printers. They're not designed to print your stuff. They're designed to sell you ink. And once you understand how this game works, you'll never look at that little machine on your desk the same way again. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to understand the economics behind one of the most brilliant and frustrating business models ever created. And here's the wild part, it's all completely legal. They're not hiding it, they're just counting on you not noticing. So let's talk about why your printer is probably the most deceptive piece of technology in your house. Here's what's really happening when you buy a printer. That $50 price tag, the company actually lost money selling it to you. Sounds crazy, right? Why would HP or Epson sell you something at a loss? Because they're not selling you a printer. They're selling you a subscription to ink that you don't realize you signed up for. Think about it this way. You walk into Best Buy, you see two printers sitting on the shelf. One costs $50, the other costs $300. Both print the same documents. Both have similar features. Which one are you buying? Obviously the cheap one. Everyone buys the cheap one. And the printer companies know this. But here's where things get sneaky. That cheap printer, it uses the exact same ink cartridges as the expensive one. And those cartridges cost the same amount to replace. Suddenly that $50 printer doesn't seem so cheap anymore. This is called the razor and blade model. Gillette invented it over 100 years ago. Sell the razor cheap, make your fortune on the blades. Printers just perfected it for the digital age, and this matters because you're not making a $50 purchase. You're making a $500 commitment. You just don't know it yet. The average person spends about 10 times the printer's cost on ink over the machine's lifetime, sometimes more. It's not just about money though. It's about the psychological trap you're walking into without realizing it. Here's what I call the commitment lock. Once you buy that printer, you're stuck. You can't switch to a different brand without buying a whole new machine. Every cartridge is proprietary. HP ink doesn't work in Canon printers. Epson cartridges don't fit in Brother machines. It's like buying a car that only runs on one specific brand of gasoline, and that brand costs 3 times what everyone else charges. But you already bought the car, so what choice do you have? This happens because of something called vendor lock-in. Once you're in their ecosystem, switching costs money, real money. So you stay trapped, buying their overpriced ink, cursing under your breath every time that low ink warning pops up. And here's where it gets worse. Your printer lies to you constantly. You know that message that says you're out of cyan ink, so you can't print anything at all, not even a black and white document? Yeah, that's not an accident. Here's the thing, your printer could absolutely print that black and white document using only black ink. The technology exists. The capability is built right into the machine sitting on your desk, but the printer won't let you do it. Why? Because if you could print with just black ink when your cyan runs out, you'd buy fewer color cartridges, and color cartridges are where they make the real money. Think about Jake. He's trying to print his resume for a job interview tomorrow morning. He clicks print. Suddenly his printer says it's out of cyan ink. But Jake doesn't need color. His resume is just black text on white paper. Doesn't matter. The printer refuses to print. Not until Jake drives to Staples at 10 p.m., drops $40 on a cyan cartridge he doesn't even need, and comes back home. All to print a black and white document. Your brain does this thing where it accepts frustrating technology as inevitable. Like, oh, well, that's just how printers work. But that's not how printers work. That's how printer companies designed them to work. There's a difference. Back when printers were new, you actually could print in black and white when you ran out of color ink, but companies realized they were leaving money on the table. So they changed the software. They made it impossible. And they did it specifically to force you to buy more cartridges. This matters because these aren't technical limitations. They're artificial restrictions created purely for profit. Now, here's where things get really interesting. You might think, okay, I'll just buy cheaper third-party ink cartridges. Smart move, right? Generic ink costs like 1/3 of what the brand name stuff costs. Printer companies hate this. So they invented something called DRM chips, DRM stands for Digital Rights Management. It's the same technology that stops you from copying Netflix movies, except now it's in your ink cartridges. Tiny computer chips that communicate with your printer to verify that you're using official ink. If the chip doesn't send the right signal, your printer refuses to work. Even if the cartridge is full of perfectly good ink, it's like if Ford put a chip in your car that detected whether you were using Ford brand gasoline. And if you filled up at Shell instead, your car just wouldn't start. You'd think that was insane, right? But that's exactly what's happening with printers. Some companies took it even further. They pushed software updates to your printer that specifically blocked third-party cartridges that used to work fine. You'd go to bed with a functioning printer, wake up to an automatic update, and suddenly your third-party ink doesn't work anymore. HP got sued for this multiple times. And here's what makes it worse. They lost those lawsuits. Courts agreed it was deceptive. But the fines were cheaper than the profits they made from forcing people to buy official ink. This is what I call the update trap. Your printer updates itself overnight. You think it's getting better, faster, more features, but really it's just closing loopholes that let you save money. Your brain trusts updates because updates usually mean improvements. Your phone gets faster, your apps get new features. So when your printer updates, you assume it's a good thing. But printer updates aren't for you. They're for the company. And specifically, they're designed to protect the company's ink profits from you trying to save money. Here's what most people don't realize. Ink is the most expensive liquid on Earth by volume. It costs more than vintage champagne, more than human blood, more than mercury. A gallon of printer ink would cost you about $5,000. And it doesn't cost anywhere near that much to make. The actual manufacturing cost is maybe $3 per cartridge. You're paying $40 for $3 worth of ink. The markup is over 1,000%. That's not a typo. 1,000%. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to admit. This isn't about making a fair profit on a good product. This is about exploiting a system where customers can't escape once they're in. What's actually happening is a form of economic hostage taking. You bought the printer. You need to print things. Your only legal option is to pay whatever they charge for ink. And they charge whatever they think you'll tolerate before you throw the whole machine in the trash. This isn't because printer companies are uniquely evil. It's because the market allows it. When every major printer manufacturer uses the same model, there's nowhere else to go. It's not really competition anymore. It's just different brands playing the same game. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. Every low ink warning becomes a reminder that you're trapped in a system designed to extract maximum money from minimum product. This is why the printing industry makes more profit from ink than from printers. Way more. For some companies, ink sales represent 80% of their total profit. The printers themselves are basically just delivery devices for the real product overpriced cartridges. Now let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah bought a nice Epson printer 3 years ago. Paid about $120. She prints maybe 10 pages a month. Nothing crazy. Just occasional recipes, boarding passes, that kind of thing. Last month, her printer stopped working. Just completely refused to print. The error message said, "Contact service." Sarah Googled it. Turns out there's something called a waste ink pad inside the printer. And Epson programmed her printer to stop working after a certain number of prints. Not because the pad was actually full, but because Epson decided it probably should be full by now. Sarah could get it fixed. But the repair cost more than a new printer, so she throws away a perfectly functional machine and buys another one. And the cycle continues. Here's what Sarah doesn't realize. That waste ink pad, it's just a sponge that absorbs excess ink during cleaning cycles. You could replace it yourself for $5. Or you could reset the counter with free software and keep using the printer for years. But Epson doesn't tell you that. They tell you to throw it away and buy a new one. Now compare that to Marcus. Marcus bought the exact same printer at the exact same time, but Marcus is a tech guy who understands how this game works. When Marcus got the waste ink pad error, he spent 15 minutes on YouTube, found a video showing exactly how to reset the counter, downloaded the free software, clicked 3 buttons, his printer works perfectly now. Same printer, same error. Sarah's is in a landfill. Marcus is still using his. Notice how the difference isn't the machine? It's just knowing that the error message is artificial. It's understanding that contact service doesn't mean the printer is broken. It means the company decided it's time for you to buy a new one. That's planned obsolescence. And it's built into almost every printer you can buy. Some printers have even more aggressive timers. They're programmed to fail after a specific date, not after a certain number of prints, after an actual calendar date. Like your printer has an expiration date stamped into its code. You could print 1 page a month. Doesn't matter. When that date hits, the printer stops working. Wild, right? Here's what most people don't realize about all of this. It's not actually about technology at all. It's about psychology. The real breakthrough wasn't inventing a better printer. It was figuring out how to make customers accept paying premium prices for a commodity product. Because here's the thing, ink is basically water with some dye in it. The technology to make it is not complicated, it's not rare, anyone can do it. So how do you charge luxury prices for something that costs pennies to make? You lock people into a system where they have no choice, you make switching expensive, you make alternatives illegal through DRM, you convince people that this is just how things are. The people who designed this system don't have better technology. They understand human behavior. They know you'll buy the cheapest printer without calculating the lifetime cost. They know you won't switch brands after you're invested. They know you'll pay $40 for ink rather than throw away a $50 printer and start over. And once you understand that this is a psychology game disguised as a technology purchase, everything changes. You stop seeing printers as neutral tools. You start seeing them as carefully engineered profit extraction devices. These patterns aren't personal failures. They're predictable traps that anyone falls into. But now that you understand the razor and blade model, the commitment lock, the update trap, all of it, you can make different choices. So here's what we've uncovered. Printers are sold at a loss to get you into the ecosystem. Then you're trapped buying overpriced ink because switching means buying a new machine. The printers block cheaper alternatives with DRM chips. They refuse to print black and white when color runs out, not because they can't, but because forcing you to replace all cartridges makes more money. And they're programmed to fail at predetermined times through artificial error messages and date-based kill switches. This all connects to something bigger. This same model is spreading everywhere. Phone companies do it with contracts. Coffee machines do it with pods. Game consoles do it with digital downloads. Once you recognize the pattern, you see it everywhere. The question isn't whether companies will try to lock you into expensive ongoing purchases. They will. They already are. The question is whether you'll recognize the trap before you step into it. Because now you know what that $50 printer really costs. You can't unknow it. You can't pretend that the low sticker price is the actual price. You understand that you're not buying a printer. You're buying a license to purchase ink at whatever price they set. Some people still buy them anyway, and that's fine. Sometimes you need a printer and you need it now, but at least you're making that choice with your eyes open. You know what you're getting into. You know why the ink costs so much. You know why the error messages pop up, and maybe, just maybe, you'll look for alternatives. Ink tank printers that you refill yourself. Laser printers where toner actually lasts. Print shops for the occasional document, or even asking yourself if you really need to print that thing at all. So next time you're standing in Target looking at that impossibly cheap printer, ask yourself, am I buying a tool or am I signing up for a subscription I didn't know existed? Because once you see the difference, everything looks different.